So this week we got the release of Near Replicant version 1.224744871139 ... That's the official title. It is the upgrade of the first Nier game, specifically the PS3 Japanese version that has the brother protagonist, as opposed to the Xbox Japanese or the Western release version that had the father protagonist that you play as. So I guess, to really get upfront with this, this will very much be my early thoughts on how the game compares to the original. This isn't, honestly, I'm not going to cover the basics of what this game is and Nier, in general. So I'm sorry if anyone's wanting that. There's plenty of there's plenty of other places, honestly, that are going to just cover. What is this game?
Well, yeah, it's just first impressions. That's all it is. Yeah, it's not an in-depth review.
Yeah, this one. Most of what I'm going to say is essentially for the fans of the first game, or people that played the first game, I should say, because there's some people who may have played it and want to see whether or not it's worth
Can
going
you also
back
cover? Can you also cover? Should this be a game that someone picks up who likes Nier Automata but hasn't played the first one?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess to really put it out
was that
there,
the answer, or
yeah, I said sure. So
go on.
So if you can't tell, I'm a huge fan of the first Nier game. So I played it on the 360 a few months after it came out. So very early on, I remember that the gaming press was absolutely crappy on this game pre-release because it just looked really weird and the graphics weren't amazing. And then when it came out, very few outlets, I think, praised it in any meaningful way. But this is a definition of a cult hit. Like, this grew legs, and not only obviously led to the amazing Nier Automata, but made Yoko Taro a real name in the industry. He'd done a lot of work before with the Drakengard series, but Nier was what really, I guess, made him a figure in the industry. And the original game was developed by Cavia, who no longer exists as a studio. And they also made Bullet Witch, which is actually a game that I quite like, even though it's very rough. But yeah, with this game, I do still love the original more than Automata. Automata is a much better game from a technical standpoint. It plays way better. But for the first Nier, it's the story, it's the characters, it's the world. To me, it's like the heart of the first game is what I love. It's just got this emotional connection to it, and honestly, it's probably the most emotionally impactful game I've played in one of them in my life. Anyway, it sticks with you. Let me just put it that way. But so I was really excited to see what they were doing to bring this game back to life. But they had a few hurdles for me. Just to see how they would overcome them. First is the overhaul of the combat, which is the thing that they pointed out that they're doing. And the second was the decision to go with the brother protagonist as opposed to the father protagonist character, which I think is a big part of why the story original is so unique for me. Is that it just felt different. But honestly, so far, I'm happy to say that they've absolutely nailed this. What they've done with this is just, it's awesome. Now, it's not a remake. It is an upgrade. So when you look at the world, you look at the layout, the geometry and everything, the game is essentially the same game, but what they've done is given it a really, really nice graphical overhaul, but they've essentially built the combat from ground up again. So when we talk about the biggest changes, that combat change is an absolute thumbs up. So it basically feels like the biggest thing they've done so far. It's almost a complete redesign. So they actually had the head guy heading up the combat was from Platinum, who Platinum developed Nier Automata. So they got them to work on this as well. And you can tell everything feels so smooth. It's definitely got a bit of an Automata vibe, but it does play differently. You're not playing as like a combat android. You're playing as, as a normal, person, essentially, with just extra, obviously, fantastic abilities. But it feels so smooth. It's the enemy AI has been upgraded because essentially you've got so many more combat options now. Like, there's a specific move where if you dodge towards the enemy, you quickly zoom behind them, and it just feels really, really awesome. It doesn't feel as smooth as Automata, but I think what they've done is really, really great. It's still very similar, single weapon combat with the book magic, whereas Automata's like two weapons you're swapping back and forth in combos, where this is still single weapon. It's still Nier, but it just feels so much smoother, and your character just feels way faster. Like, even just running around. I don't know if it is technically, but it feels that way. So it should make there's like a speed run challenge where you've got to beat the game in 15 hours. It should make that hopefully be even easier, even though it's not tough. But graphically, the game is a lot prettier. If you're expecting it to kind of be on the same level of Nier Automata, I don't think it quite reaches that, but it's much more colourful. The original game was more colourful anyway, but it's just they've improved the lighting. You look around, like the first main Northern Plains area you generally go to. It just looks a lot nicer. The first Nier was rightfully criticised for looking quite drab and being a bit average graphically. So they've done a lot there. But yeah, it's running also at a really, really nice 60 frames a second. I'm playing it on Series X. I don't think that probably makes a difference because there's no standalone version of Series X, and I haven't heard that they've done any upgrades specific for the newer platforms. So I would assume that it's running at 60 on Xbox One and PS4, but I'm not 100% on that one. But the other probably biggest change that I would call out is sound. So this is the most interesting one for me. So if you compare this soundtrack of the upgrade to 99% of other game soundtracks, it's just going to shit all over it. It's fantastic. But as soon as you compare it to the original, so they've rearranged almost all the music in the game. And so far, I'm not a huge fan of rearrangements specifically. But this is this is definitely something that's more so for fans of the original and the soundtrack, that I kind of wish you had the option to toggle back and forth, even so that I can kind of compare it. I did think about sitting down and listening to the originals like on computer and then checking them, what the arrangements are like, but it's still great. It's still an amazing soundtrack. I just don't think it's an upgrade, whereas everything else feels like an upgrade, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They've also re-recorded all the dialogue, and they've pretty much got all the main cast back. Laura Bailey is still amazing as Kaine. I can't remember his name, but the Grimoire Vice's voice actor is probably one of my favourite voice acting performances ever. Grimoire Vice is just awesome. It's always interesting when they make the decision to re-record dialogue, because you're like, well, why? But it's good. I don't know if there's much new dialogue. There's definitely all the protagonist's dialogue is new because that was never recorded in English to begin with. But yeah, so music, I'm not sold on it yet, but everything else is good with that. But the last thing I wanted to kind of cover is from a content standpoint. So I'm about 11 hours into the game already, and so far, it's pretty much identical content-wise. But I do have an idea of some of the new stuff they've added in, like cut content. And I'm not going to be spoiling anything, but I believe there's an additional episode that they've added in that might be based on a story from... There was a book released only in Japan called Grimoire Nier, and I believe it's loosely based on one of the stories from that, from what I've heard. And I also have an idea of other new content. So I know there's stuff coming up, so I'm looking forward to getting to that. So I might kind of talk a bit more to that in coming weeks without spoiling anything. So just, I guess, some overall things that I'm just really happy that this masterpiece is getting to the hands and the hearts of more people. This is a game that deserves to be known more. It's, as I said, it's one of the most emotional games I've ever played, and I think that what you'll see is you'll have a whole new generation of people, or people that dismissed the game originally, that will have a chance to experience it. And yeah, I'm honestly, once I'm done with the game, then I'll be able to judge whether or not I think it was the right decision to go with the brother protagonist over the father protagonist, because there is definitely that emotional connection there, and that story is just so important to me. But yeah, I'd say so far I think it's a fantastic upgrade and well worth it for not only new players, but the fact that the changes they've made to the combat will make it so that anyone coming from Nier Automata will feel that it's not a huge downgrade.
So do you think, as someone who's just played Nier Automata, this is well worth getting? And then the second question is, if you haven't fully played through Nier Automata, does it make sense to play this first and then Nier Automata?
So, first of all, this game is worth getting. I will recommend this game to anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
If you're a completionist, just know that the game is a little... there's a lot of farming there if you want to do everything, but if you just want to play the game and enjoy the story, then that's a non-issue. But when it comes to what you should play first, thankfully the way that these two games connect or don't connect makes it so you can play either or, and then play the one after it. There's definitely some benefit to playing this game first, but I don't think you're losing much by doing it the other way. It's just more, okay, you'll get a little more context, but it's hard to talk about without spoiling it, but there's the connections that are there are pretty tenuous from a player standpoint. But they're cool if you dig into, if that makes sense.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you'll do a review at some later stage, I'm guessing?
I don't know if I'll do a full review, but I'll probably just update you guys and let you know what my final thoughts are. So,
all right, sweet. And do you want to move on to the next one?
Yes. So the next one is a review.